Hello and welcome to the Beauty Industry Podcast, your online support community for the professional beauty industry. I am your host, founding director of Beauty Industry, Tamara Shaw. Here we are closing the competitive gap and speaking your language. This is a platform created and dedicated to the professional beauty industry, valuing community over competition. We serve to help connect you with inspiration from industry experts, expand your knowledge through educational pieces, and bring you the latest in product and technology innovation. This is Beauty Industry. Today we are speaking with Gabrielle Requena from Wrinkles Schminkles. Making waves when they hit TV screens across Australia on the show Shark Tank, Wrinkles Schminkles have since been making their way into salons like yours across the country. The Wrinkles Schminkles product is a 100% medical grade silicone pad worn overnight, allowing you to wake up with smooth, wrinkle-free skin. Unlike other masks, it's not infused with any ingredients. It's actually the pure silicone nature of the product that enables their exceptional results. Gabrielle shares with us her own collagen concern and how that led the way into developing a product for the beauty industry. The background behind that iconic name, Wrinkles Schminkles, that makes me smile every time I say it, and how a TV show turned her dreams into an e-commerce reality. Here's Gabrielle and I for the Beauty Industry Podcast. Gabrielle, welcome and thank you for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you so much, Tamara.
It's a pleasure to have you on. And I'd love to start, you've got such a famous story already, but I ask each of our guests in the same week to really take a look at how you entered into the beauty industry. So I'm wondering what your pathway was around that.
Sure. Not in skincare or beauty at all. I mean, I always had a passion for it, but I think a lot of good business ideas come out of a real personal problem. And for me, my background was management consulting and then working for a lot of digital tech companies. But I started facing a problem that I wanted a solution to, which didn't exist, which was starting to get those chest lines and wrinkles on the chest. So that sort of set about a whole path of creating this range and then completely changing industry from a career perspective.
What was that like? Because I imagine, you've got this problem and you want it fixed, but where does one even start?
I think it's like anything. I mean, and in today's world, you start Googling, you start researching, and then you start trying products and bit by bit realizing that, there is still a lot of gaps in the market. And I think it's so easy these days to think there's something for everything. But once you just got to trust your instincts around if you're the target demographic for your idea and concept and product, you are streets ahead of the rest of people trying to formulate ideas who are in a completely different target market, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
For me, that's what led me to this path and creating this range and ending up, growing it and continuing to grow it globally at the moment.
Fantastic. And so how much research and kind of deep diving into the industry did you really have to do? I mean, you would have had to look at the landscape and what was currently out there. Was it a huge process?
Was it a huge process? It was a process, but, there was a lot of products. If I take that specific example, there were a lot of products, serums, creams, lotions and potions advertised to treat the décolletage. And it was really a matter of thinking, oh, great, that sounds like the perfect cream for me, and using that cream and then sat thinking, oh, that doesn't work because the lines are happening while you side sleep. So it's a process, and it was a personal process, and it didn't start out to create a business off it. I was just trying to find a solution to a problem, and it was down the track that I realised there wasn't one and that this could be a real opportunity. And I think initially, you sort of simplistically, once I realised there was nothing on the market, it's all about prototyping and research and finding the right manufacturers and contract manufacturers that will work with you with your idea. And for me, it was a concept around how can you keep the skin taut while you sleep so it can't crease or wrinkle. And that set about thinking, okay, well, what sort of materials could you make that with, and so forth. And eventually we sort of landed on this concept that medical grade silicone has been used to treat skin for a long, long time in the medical profession, and still to this day is really one of the only scientifically proven scar healing treatments out there that plastic surgeons and dermatologists and everybody recommend. So that already existed for scar treatment. So it was kind of about morphing those concepts and ideas to create a range that could work to treat wrinkles and fine lines and creping of the skin.
Fantastic. And all while we have a restful night's sleep, which is what I love about the product. For those who maybe haven't heard or seen of it before, can you share with us what it is and how it works?
Yes. So it's a range of 100% medical grade silicone pads or patches. So another way to think of it is like a mask, but rather than infusing any ingredients or serums into the mask like traditional sheet masks, it's a pure 100% medical grade silicone product. And on one side is an adhesive, and that is also 100% medical grade silicone, just different variations. The way it works is that there are effectively different shapes for different parts of the body. So the hero product is the chest, and there's eyes, forehead, neck, mouth, and hands. You stick them face down on that part of the body that you're trying to treat while you go to sleep. And it works by simplistically keeping the skin taut so it can't crease or wrinkle. And then more scientifically, it's also working with those healing properties of the medical grade silicone. And that's what's proven to draw up hydration and moisture and can stimulate collagen. So you're actually treating the skin at the same time as keeping it taut. And because the range works this way, it allows you to get an immediate result after that very first night you've used it, because you haven't let the skin crease or wrinkle. And at the same time, it's allowing you to get a cumulative result over time as you continue to treat the skin.
Brilliant. I love that. And it's just, as you said, it's about finding who the product is for and making that solution. And I guess in this day and age, we're all saying, you know, I don't have time to do a 10-step home routine and I'm so busy. And it's kind of like, well, you have no choice but to sleep. So why would we not treat the skin at the same time?
Yeah, I think it is a really convenient solution for those reasons. And some people don't want to use it while they sleep as well. It's probably worth mentioning, and it can be used for 1 to 2 hours during the day for great results as well. But I think one of the things we always say to people when they're starting out with the range, and like they question, because it is a slightly new category of product, you know, how often do I use it? Every night, every day? And I always say, you know, to fit it into your own skincare routine. So that might be wearing the chest product every single night while you sleep, because that's a very easy product to wear while you sleep. For the eyes, some people are really committed to using their under eye creams, and they don't want to forego that every single night. So for them, you know, 2 or 3 nights a week, and then you can use your eye cream every day, and also those down nights. So it's just about fitting it into your routine.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think as beauty therapists, sometimes we talk about the ingredients and we talk about how to use the product, and we don't often think about what the client is actually doing when they get home. And I've often heard therapists say about masks in specific is, you know, go home, make yourself a cup of herbal tea, sit on the couch with a lovely book, take some time out for you and wear the product, you know, whereas in reality, we know that no client's got that time, you know, or maybe one in 20 people have that time these days. So, you know, you can say something like popping it on while you're cooking dinner, or, you know, popping your eye mask on while you're scrolling through Instagram, you know. So really putting it into somebody's lifestyle and selling it through that way.
No, it's so true. And I'm guilty of it as well. I've bought a few things that are literally sitting on my desk that have been sitting there for months that I haven't tried because it doesn't fit into my routine. And I think it's one of those things, like, how do you break someone's existing skincare routine to sort of deviate and try something new? And it usually comes down to when there's a problem that they don't like. And chest wrinkles is one of those problems that, people start to see the lines sort of mid-30s, late 30s, and there isn't anything out there. So it does really drive people to passionately try something new. When they see the results, then I think it's easy to fit something into your routine when you see a great result, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I've actually been noticing lately, I'm 29 next week, and I've been noticing of a morning when I wake up, that line coming through the décolletage and the bust. And I remember my beauty school teacher actually saying to me, do not sleep on your side because you will get this line. And she showed us her line, and she was early 40s. And I thought, oh my goodness, can I never sleep on my side ever again? But I think when you've got that problem, people are seeking a solution, and that's exactly what the brand has done. I want to talk about the name Wrinkles Schminkles.
Yes.
It's brilliant. You can't forget it. And it's so much fun to say. Apart from the obvious, you're trying to help the problem of wrinkles. Where did that name come from?
Sorry, it just cut out for one moment. What was the last bit you said then?
Where did the name come from?
The name. So I named it myself. At the time, I was quite torn actually, because we were launching something that's medical grade. It was very tempting to look for a more medical grade name. And I think one of the things that we decided to stick with Wrinkles Schminkles that held true was, I believe in always naming a brand for the end consumer and the user. And we weren't creating a range for a professional range as such. It's a great retail product for professionals to include in their clinic and salon, but the range itself is for consumers to easily use at home. So I think once we understood how people felt about the brand, I think in this category, I really identified that a lot of us feel, including myself, quite fearful about the aging process, and we're marketed to with a lot of things that make us feel fearful, and therefore to act on it and spend a huge amount of money, and that will make you feel better. And what I liked about Wrinkles Schminkles is our product is a lower price point at $42 Australian in the Australian market. It is reusable, 20 to 30 uses. So it's not a big invasive treatment where you're spending $500. It's something different, and it is more about using it while you sleep, Wrinkles Schminkles, and just getting on with your day and not having those lines when you wake up. So it fits really well into that market of women that want an affordable product, and it is a bit of an interesting thing to go to sleep at night with a silicone pad stuck on a different part of the body, but you do get great results from it. So it's just about Wrinkles Schminkles and waking up and not having those wrinkles and sort of getting on with your day. So I just didn't want it to be one of those products that you have your fears of aging attached to it as much. It's like that whole word anti-aging, which we all use because there isn't another word. But at the same time, when you think about that word, it's not a great word.
No, that's exactly right. And I guess it's more of a kind of blue sky, positive light mentality, exactly as you're saying.
Fun.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. Everyone is going to age. We know this, and we know that with aging comes wrinkles. And I love what you've done there in playing with that branding. And exactly as you're saying, it's not for medical practitioners, it's not for skin specialists, it's for the end consumer. And I guess very strategic, and by way of wholesaling the branding, calling it Wrinkles Schminkles, because if I am going to Google anything to help my wrinkles, I'm sure that you guys would come up quite high on the SEO Google rankings. So yes. I love that.
Well, yeah, that was a big plus as well, because my background is digital, and I had I worked at eBay for many years, and then had my own consulting company for about 10 years, and SEO was one of our specialties. So for me, being able to have a light, fun-hearted brand name, but also having that important keyword in there is just such a bonus. And I couldn't go with anything else in the end.
I'm wondering if people ever not took you seriously because of the name.
Sometimes, not so much the end consumer, but more sort of the more plastic surgeon end of town. And we do still have a lot of stockists that stock it. plastic surgeons, that is, and dermatologists and professionals. But in the early days when there wasn't as much awareness as we've managed to get for the brand now, it was very much, I'm not stocking a retail product that's gimmicky. Now we've managed to overcome a lot of that thinking and a lot of those hurdles, because the product itself has got more awareness in the market now and what it does. But yes, there's still the odd person. It's kind of love or hate. You either have people that call you and say, oh my God, I love the brand name, or you sort of get feedback that go, oh, it's such a strange brand name you chose. It just depends where people sit, I think, on the spectrum and how, how their thinking is. But, for us, we know it gives people a little giggle and it's lighthearted, but it's backed by real science. So,
yeah, I think that's what stands out for me about the brand, is that, you can kind of be self-deprecating and be really fun and loving and, have a play with wrinkles. But then at the end of the day, you still do get the visible instant results. So, boo to those people who laugh.
Thank you.
I'm wondering what your biggest learning experience is in formulation and startup. We have quite a lot of people who are looking to start up their own product brand or even their own business in terms of a bricks and mortar. Could you share with us what your biggest learning experience was, so that they could kind of take that on and, hopefully overcome any situations they may face?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think, like, in my experience with any and even consulting experience, where I worked for a lot of small businesses and startups, tech, or in many industries, I think, the idea you set out with and what you think the business will look like is often, if you haven't played in that area before, for me it was, retail. So I'm in retail. I have a retail product, and what you think will be your day-to-day and what you think you'll be doing is obviously quite different. And there's a huge amount of learning, especially when you're not just selling direct to consumer, but selling in the wholesale space and to large retail brand names like the stockists that we have. In Australia, it's like the Adore Beauty and Peters of Kensington and large retailers like that, through to all the Medi-Spas and laser clinics. In the US, it's bigger brand names like Neiman Marcus, Nordstrom, Macy's. You really need to learn how they do business and fit into their processes and their promotional plans. And it is that for me was a really big learning curve. I think as well, I launched it because it was for me, and then it was a little, hobby business on the side of my consulting business. And so as I started realizing there was an opportunity for it, it was quite a big learning curve. And I've been very fortunate that it has been successful. And I was fortunate that a lot of my past life, management consultant, digital experience at companies like eBay, it set me up with a lot of contacts and skills to be able to pick up the phone, ask someone for a favor, or just start researching and figuring it out along the way. That's what a management consultant is, effectively, a problem solver. And I guess those skills sort of enabled me to do it, but it is quite overwhelming. You learn things like, everything from barcoding and through to fulfillment and inventory management. And, that could be applied to any industry. It's really not about skincare at all. So, you end up being in a space and doing the day-to-day work, which is not always, glamorous, not always the most enjoyable part of the business, but it has to be done when you're launching a retail product. So,
yeah, that's great advice. And so now, globally, how did that come about?
I think once we launched in Australia, a lot of customers, US customers, were already finding out about us and buying online, and that's the beauty of digital and online. You can really track and see what's happening with your business. So we quickly after that launched a US version of the website. And then when we realized, there was a real opportunity there and for growth and such a bigger population to market to, we set up, the satellite office over there, which is, warehousing and fulfillment, which happens over there out of Texas. And then brought on board, the right people to acquire the retail accounts and PR agencies to grow the brand. And from there, it really just snowballed. So it was really a focus on Australia and the US initially. Then we've taken on board a New Zealand distributor. Like, New Zealand's a lovely and important market for us, but not big enough for us to invest the same amount of fixed work to that market. So we were really happy to take on a great partner and distributor there. And then more recently throughout Europe, we've got our European certification, which for anyone that's tried to go through that process, that's another interesting experience. But we do have our European certification now, and we are launching in a lot of retailers over there throughout different parts of Europe, as well as we've got our first TV shopping in the UK in July. So
fantastic.
You start to attract people it's always hard deciding what to focus on when you're growing a business. But one of the things I've definitely learned is if you try not to be too distracted, if you keep to your focus of, your own brand and growing that brand the right way with PR and digital, people will find you. And that's not just customers, but it's contacts and it's people in the industry that will say, hey, I'd love to distribute your brand over here in whatever market it might be. And you will attract those people that see it as a good fit. And that's often the best way to expand, rather than you pushing, trying to find the right people. If you keep just focusing on what you're doing and doing really well, it's actually a much smarter and successful strategy when you draw it in and attract those right people. So it's that real balancing act of pushing, and then just seeing what happens. And as much as some people would think that's not the right way to do business, I find that's often one of the best ways to do business. And that's probably coming from me being a meditator and learning a lot along the way about just letting things happen the way they're meant to happen.
Yeah, and great advice there in, not burning your bridges and putting your energy and just focusing it into your pathway or your lane, because there is so much that goes on out there in the beauty and retail. Sometimes we can get distracted and think, oh, should I be doing what they're doing? Or, totally. they're doing online sales or they're doing TV sales. Should I be doing that? And sometimes I think you've got to come back to your brand values and figuring out, well, is this for my business, or am I just doing it purely for the sake of I saw somebody else doing that? So that's beautiful. Yeah. And in terms of the retail, you're now stocked on Adore Beauty. Yes. We have quite a few B2B wholesalers who actually tune into the podcast. And so I'm wondering, how does one even get their product on Adore Beauty? I can imagine that's quite a process.
Yeah, look, it is. I think, again, it comes down to timing and your brand awareness and presence at that time. So for Adore Beauty, I remember how I, got in contact with them. I actually guessed, quite a funny story, which I don't think they know, but I knew Kate was the founder we had the same web developer at the time. And I knew she was super busy and growing. And so we've been stocked there for about 3 years now. So I guessed variations of her email address.
No.
I did. And I sent variations of that email to that email address, and one of them was correct. And she wrote back and said, sounds great, I'll put you in touch with the head beauty buyer and see how it goes.
Wow.
And I went down and met her in Melbourne, and she was a bit we didn't have big awareness then. We hadn't been on the Real Housewives of Sydney. I hadn't been on Shark Tank. Like a lot of small startups, you're sort of doing a bit of PR and digital to try and grow your brand that way. And I did have to convince her and say, look, this will work on the platform. And we started out small, and being able to convince them to probably having that digital background and to try sending out the emails with the right educational information, just launched the brand on Adore. And from there we got the repeat purchases, and we've done a whole lot of promotional plans with Adore. They're a great company to work with in terms of their promotional planning and different things you can do on their site to grow your brand with the Adore Beauty customer. So it's been a really lovely relationship for us. They've been very supportive of us in some charitable initiatives we've done, and every time we launch a new product, and it's been a great relationship. And we've been lucky that, you know, it's not the same for everyone. I mean, I had a lady the other day call me, not in the Adore Beauty space, but in the this is more TV shopping space. She called me and very randomly, and she said, look, I'm a police officer, but I've got this amazing idea, this skincare brand, and I'm pitching it to TVSN and I'm just not hearing back. And I know you're on there, and can you help me? It makes no sense to me why they're not replying. And I was like, well, if they're not replying, it's because they're not interested. And she said, but it does this and it does that. And I was like, well, sometimes it's all about timing and what the trends are for them and what else they've got in their category of products. So, you know, it can be really hard to get your foot indoors. You know, for me, I was in touch with TVSN for three and a half years before we went on there.
Wow.
And now we're a regular featured brand on there. We've just been nominated for 3 awards as part of their annual awards program. So, but, you know, when we first approached them, we weren't on Real Housewives of Sydney and we weren't on Shark Tank. So it's that comes back to my earlier point, that if you just focus on doing the right things to build the brand, and then you push and try and reach out to people, you can be much more successful that way than just pushing without growing your brand and the awareness of it out there.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer in, you know, to a certain extent, you need to be persistent and tenacious.
Absolutely.
But there is for me a resistance sometimes when I'm getting a bit of resistance. I think, maybe this isn't the right time, or maybe this isn't the right fit.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's so hard to know because, you know, if you're growing a business, you have to be of the mindset of being a high achiever or you won't get there. But you also have to be able to pull back and recognize when it's not the right thing to be pursuing at that point in time. Doesn't mean it won't be forever, but it's hard to know sometimes what to just let go of and what to put your efforts behind. But intuition is a big thing often, I think.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I'd love to go back and have a chat about Shark Tank, as you mentioned before. What was that experience like for yourself and for the business?
For the business, it was amazing once it went live. I always thought Shark Tank exposure would be very good for business relationships, but I really didn't understand that the consumer that was watching Shark Tank would be a Wrinkles Schminkles buyer. You know, the spike in sales was beyond that of the Real Housewives of Sydney TV exposure, whereas you would think it would be the other way around. So it was amazing for the business. Personally, it was something very out of my comfort zone. I've presented to very senior people and been part of boards in my past working life, but there's something about the environment that is created with Shark Tank. It is real. A lot of people think you can go in there and do multiple takes. You can't. You walk in those doors, you stand at the spot, and that's it. There is no multiple takes at all. So, you know, you really are exposing yourself to, you know, a panel of people that are going to ask questions to get to know your business. But at the end of the day, it's also an entertainment show. So you can't get upset if they're going to try to pick parts of your business apart to have an interesting storyline as well. So you have to be prepared that that's what the show is about, that you're using it to get exposure and maybe an investor, and they're using you for entertainment and maybe a good business deal.
Yeah.
So knowing that and seeing all, you know, I'd watched it, I've been a fan of the show for many years, and seeing some of the people, you know, it's horrible when you see someone on there come undone, you know, you just feel like sinking into the corner of the couch. But I just over-prepared. I knew I've got a business background, so, you know, it was the obvious things to prepare for, you know, were obvious, but you really have to make sure you know everything about your business that could possibly be brought up. Otherwise, you leave yourself open to, national discussion about your brand. I was very lucky. My segment went very well. Everyone was very positive. I didn't get an investor, Steve. It was edited for different. Of course, it was edited to create a storyline, but my experience was really positive. Steve Baxter did want to invest, but at a high equity, which I said there's no point going down that path. And the other sharks didn't want to invest for different reasons, but most of the reasons were quite positive. So
yeah, I love
it was
that.
a positive experience overall.
I think that's probably the one thing that's really stuck with me in my businesses and businesses I have run. As business owners, I think the financials, sometimes we can just bury our heads in the ground. And if there ever comes to the end of the month where I'm reconciling and I think, oh my gosh, what was I doing this month? I haven't been looking at my financials as much as I should have. I always think to myself, imagine standing in front of those sharks and being drilled all of those questions.
I know. Look, it was even for me, it was a very, very nerve-wracking experience preparing for it. On the day, I was fine. I was like, I just can't wait, to get this out of the way. But it's a real build-up, and it is very nerve-wracking because you just don't know which way it's going to go. And even for people that were there filming their segments on the same day as me, there was people that were like, oh, I'm totally fine, and then came out in tears. It's a really intense environment. It is. And you just have to make sure you absolutely over prepare and get the right support around you. And I'm not saying I sat there and did it by myself. In the preparation, it was very much talking to people who are stronger in numbers than me and doing some analysis on the business. And I learned, the best part of it for me was I came out of there and I knew so much more about the financials of my business than I knew before.
Yeah.
And it enabled me to make decisions of different products we've since launched. That was what led me to go and regroup again with the TV shopping partner and take that to air. And that's been a huge growth area of our business. So, it'd almost be great for every startup to have a fake Shark Tank preparation because, you really do get to know your own business.
Yeah, that's incredible. Gabrielle, I'm wondering then if you could tell your younger self pre-Wrinkles Schminkles a piece of advice, what would that be?
What would that be? I'm not sure I would do things entirely differently. One thing that would have been amazing is I have a lot of people approach me now at that startup stage for advice and to help them. And if I'd known I was going to end up with the business morphing beyond a hobby business, I would have engaged some more experienced consultants around me to have that end game in mind. I think, there's certain things along the way which, you learn that what a shame you didn't know that before. And I think sometimes engaging and spending that money that you initially don't have on expert advice is just an incredible benefit to the business. And I possibly would have surrounded myself at that development stage with more expert advice.
I think sometimes the naivety that we have going into business is almost a blessing because if you really knew how hard it was going to be, you might not have traveled down that pathway in the first place.
Yeah, it's so true. If you knew, that your life becomes about warehousing and inventory, that you would think maybe, oh, I'm not doing that. But, it's like any business. There's a lot of parts of it that aren't glamorous and aren't your favourite thing, but you have to do all elements, don't you?
That's exactly right. Gabrielle, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. It has been so lovely speaking to you and finding out more about Wrinkles Schminkles, and I'm glad I didn't stuff up that pronunciation the whole time.
No, you are perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Gabrielle's outlook on the aging process is one I think we should all adopt. Wrinkles and, shall we say, the aging process doesn't all have to be serious chats about collagen, elastin, and gravity taking place, but instead it can be fun and lighthearted, showing us that age can be just a number. The resilience it takes to launch a product into the beauty industry is one I think we can all resonate with, and for Gabrielle to trust her gut knowing that there were women out there with the same concern as her is one that I'm so glad she identified and acted on. As always, thank you so much for tuning into today's conversation. I'm actually off now to apply the Wrinkles Schminkles #1 selling item, the Chest and Décolletage Smoothing Kit. Can't wait to show you all the before and after results. Until next time, stay connected.